Hello everyone, welcome back. As you may notice, I don't have a headset or the handheld mic or really anything today. That means I'm recording the audio through the phone itself. Normally I have my old phone charged up, ready to go, and I've learned today that I cannot plug a USB mic into my new phone. So I apologize if the audio is a little bit screwed up. I want to keep the channel very much like anyone can do this kind of vibe. Hence a whiteboard is my main medium of projecting the news. And, this Gus setup is part of the charm, hopefully. So, either way, here we go. First thing I'll shout out, I'm recording this on Achilleas' birthday. So, shout out to Achilles. Happy birthday. He's the one delivering most of this news. So, absolute one for the scene. And has obviously helped me a great deal with being able to put this out for you guys. So, on to the news. Number 1, Twisted Minds. I'm gonna get tired of drawing this logo. This is a difficult logo to draw. Nwpo and Rise are considering Mesho. Now, this was originally reported as a done deal earlier in the week. That was retracted because it does still appear that Rise and Nwpo are still looking to import. So if they don't end up importing, it wouldn't surprise me if they go with Mesho, but figured I would mention that as one of the options for that duo. Nothing's locked. Could see them still import someone, but as of now, probably the top choice in MENA, if I had to guess based on this, it'd be Mesho. Number 2, I drew the Magnifico logo. These guys never announced themselves as like Magnifico specifically, but you have that Tox and Atomik duo, so figured I'd draw that logo just to have something up there. Originally, it was reported that Tox, Atomik, and Rezears are going to be teaming for the next season, and this has fallen apart this week. So this one's actually a little bit sad because the state of the game is really the reason why they're splitting up. This was probably projected to be around 6th, 7th in Europe in terms of talent, if I had to guess. And as of now, Atomik is still looking for team, probably in Europe. But the main reason this happened is because Tox initially saw an opportunity that he couldn't resist, and that was joining Dr. Known and Nush. They're going to be playing under an organization in MENA. Currently, Dr. Known and Nush are signed to Vision Esports. Not sure if that's going to be where they're signed to next year, but it does appear that Tox got that opportunity to play alongside of them. They're going to be playing in the MENA region. I understand from, the perspective of this Atomik Tox and Rezears roster is probably not getting signed unless a miracle happens, and Tox has to take the paycheck. Like, that's just the state of the league right now, and it sucks that that is what ends up happening and what ends up splitting quite possibly the 6th best team in Europe, but here we are. In response, Rezears actually is joining Tho and Ocelon in APAC. I made thoughts about importing to APAC pretty clear, but it's also, there's a lot more nuance to it because Rezears, from his perspective, the only way that he can actually keep playing in a sustainable way is to move over to APAC. Being around that 6th, 7th range in Europe, or even Rezears, like, there's no guarantee he gets another team as good as Tox and Atomik. Like, I thought that was a very solid landing spot for him. And so there's no real guarantee that, staying in that, barely making main event now in Europe is much less sustainable than moving to APAC. So while it sucks that the local Asian talent's going to get kind of bleeded out by the importing situation, it's like there's a lot more that needs to be fixed before we're just like, yeah, no, don't do that. Because I think if there was a 2/3 import rule, Rezears is just retiring from the sounds of it. So, and Rezears is definitely still too good to be retiring. So, a lot needs fixed. Atomik, looking for team. Hopefully he lands on a good spot. All right, jetting in a little bit. I know, kind of weird to have a cut in these videos, but had to mention this because news came out 5 minutes ago. I was kind of actually thinking about this as I was recording. I didn't want to really put it out there because it wasn't like anything official, but I did find it kind of weird that Atomik is a very solid player looking for a team, and these guys are looking to import someone potentially. And it came out from Rltvcom that Atomik is probably going to be joining Rise and Nwpo. So looks like he's headed over to MENA as well. Kind of wild that this entire roster that I projected 6th in Europe ends up all splitting up and not playing in Europe next year. But honestly, Atomik landing with the squad, very solid landing spot. They're expected to make land as well. So glad Atomik landed on his feet after a very difficult situation appeared here. So, yep. Anyways, back to Limitless. Other one that kind of slipped under the radar for a lot of people, Limitless have released Noxus. Noxus has been their coach for, I believe, the past 2 years. He's a North American talent. He's been coaching for quite a while. I believe he's Puerto Rican. but they did release him earlier this week. No real word on who the new coach is going to be, but does look like the roster is probably going to stay the same, especially based on the fact that they competed in the FIFA World Cup. But looks like they'll be with a new coach. To any Geekay fans out there, and I'm sure that there will be a lot more heading into this year, I apologize for this logo. I looked at how to draw this logo, and I was just not feeling it. I'm going to be real. Like, the real logo looks very difficult, and I could have tackled it, but unfortunately, like, I also have things to do today, and I am not an artist. I did, honestly, a pretty good job given the time limit that I really put on myself. But the reason why Geekay is up here is because they're going to be signing a very good team, in my opinion. They're expected to sign that Joyo, Archie, and Oaly roster. Now, there were some considerations. I kept mentioning that G2 might be in this picture. I feel like this is probably pretty telling that G2 is no longer in the picture. So that definitely sucks from the G2 perspective. But I think they're going to be coached by Nick on RL. I believe originally the plan was to import talent into MENA. There was a report very, very early in this offseason that was like, hey, Geekay is looking to build a really good roster and they're willing to spend to do it. This is a Middle Eastern-based org. They signed Nick first thing and we're like, all right, cook up a team. It actually feels very similar to what M80 did last year in North America, where they just handed Nick the keys and said, hey, do what you can. Instead of building a team from scratch, it looks like Nick has been like, okay, that Joyo, Archie, Oaly duo or trio, that's really good. There have been some mixed takes. I put out on Twitter that this team should be making a LAN this year. And I think there's a lot of hesitancy, especially considering how England did at the FIFA World Cup. They didn't get out of their group, which is definitely a surprise. England being 2/3 Joyo, Archie. But personally, the way I view Europe, you've got your two super teams of Carbine Core Vitality, right? And then I think beyond that, there's three other teams contending for those LAN spots. There's Gentlemates, there's Ninja Pajamas, who actually basically put pen to paper this week. Hasn't been announced by the organization, but Achilleas has said that should be a done deal. And this projected to be Geekay squad. So honestly, like, I think this is a very solid pickup for this organization to try to get on the main stage of the RLCS. They will be competing in Europe, another Middle Eastern org, but they will be competing in the EU RLCS. Wouldn't be surprised to see them at LAN at least once this season. I think it would take someone coming out of nowhere to stop them from making at least one. I know there's only 4 LAN spots for each major, but once you get into the weeds and look at the fact that the last chance qualifier is most likely going to go to Europe, that gives them 5 spots for Worlds. That's where, I listed 5 teams there for a reason. So, last bit of org news this week is Wildcard. They're expected to sign OCE's New Jeans roster. This is the roster of Amphis, Super Locky, and Kaka. They're coached by Mock. This squad recently won the RLO Grand Slam. So there was a off-season tournament in OCE, had all the big dogs participating. This squad ended up losing to Kib Gang, which is Cabo Caleb Shores. If I'm remembering that off the top of my head, I'll put something up if that's not right. So they ended up losing to that squad, but then that actually put them in a position in the bracket where they would have to face both the other 2 expected top 3 teams in OCE, that being your Gus, Fever, and Torsos roster that we saw at FIFA World Cup, and then they took down the Fiber Mock Banana Head, or not Fiber Mock, Fiber Hunter Banana Head roster in the final of that event. Won both of those series 4-2. So at least based on off-season tournaments, could be a favorite in OCE. Personally, it wouldn't surprise me to see them at LAN at least twice next year. So, yeah, it looks like they're going to be signed by Wildcard, which I think is a very solid pickup. Excited to see organizations entering the OCE scene, especially considering that looks like Power is off the map for the time being. Pioneers is moving back to North America. And what was the other? Chiefs probably not going to sign a squad just yet. They might sign that Banana Head squad, but I mean that's mostly looking like Hunter needs to be released from Chiefs rather than Chiefs are gearing up to sign them. So we heard what Brendy, one of the guys on Chiefs, was saying about the state of the Rocket League. So it wouldn't surprise me to not really see them back next year. But there's still a solid 3 weeks left of the offseason, and there's no limit to when orgs can sign teams. So I'll talk about when orgs will sign teams later as well. Next up, 2 other bits of news aren't really organization related. I mentioned very early in this offseason that Mu might be coming back to coach Rocket League. Since then, it looks like he's landed a gig with GiantX. This is according to Sheep Esports, who's really big in the world of League of Legends, Valorant, reporting on those news, especially in Europe. So it looks like Mu is going to be a performance coach for GiantX. He'll be working with both the League of Legends and Valorant squads. So props to him for landing that role. I think that's a solid gig, but at least from the perspective of Rocket League, that means he's not coming back to Rocket League this season. So there's interest. Doesn't look like it's happening this year. And the last bit is the Esports World Cup partner program is expanding to 40 teams. Last year it was at 30 teams, and they're up in the ante. Now, there's a lot of discussion for how this event is run, etc. And basically the Esports World Cup partner program is, from my understanding of it last year, they would give orgs money to invest in new esports that they're not in yet in order to compete for that big crown in Riyadh. Obviously, the Rocket League had an Esports World Cup event this year, ended up getting won by BDS. That was their first win, or first LAN win of the year. And yeah, so last year there were 30 teams partnered in this program. Some of the bigger names that you might recognize as being in Rocket League basically for this part was TSM Cloud9. Both of those guys signed squads. Looked like TSM wanted to be in from the start of the season, but then Cloud9 came in kind of last minute and picked up that Omelet squad. So the fact that it expanded to 40 teams, we don't know what those 40 teams are going to be yet, which I think is a lot of hesitancy as well. But because of this, don't be surprised if come split 2, we see a lot more orgs signing teams for a split. Could just be like a, very similar to how Cloud9 picked up that Omelet squad. It's like, maybe it's not a big chance, but there's a chance we could get into the Esports World Cup LAN event in Riyadh. And if we fund this team, it's not really coming out of our pockets. Like, the Saudi government is basically, and the people that are running this are basically paying the orgs, hey, go pick up a team in, Overwatch and Rocket League and whatever in order to compete in this event. So if it is structured the same way this year, that is. But yeah, last year there were 30 teams. Looks like they're upping it to 40 teams. So keep an eye on that, as that could signify some of the orgs that might be interested later on down the line. That being said, that would only really happen if Rocket League does have an event at the Esports World Cup again next year. It wouldn't surprise me. They really should still have an event, but one of the telling things going from last year, or from the year before to last year, is that the prize pool for that event for Rocket League was cut down from $2 million to $250,000. So I'd still expect to see Rocket League at that event, especially given how much Saudi Arabia and the Middle East do tend to love Rocket League, but still very much up in the air. Figured I'd bring it up, as that could be more news later on. So either way, that's what we got for this week. It was very calm until like Wednesday, and then everything hit the fan. So should be a lot of fun. I'm excited for this Geekay squad because they're probably going to be making LAN under that banner, and so I think that's a solid pickup from them. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next week.